The sun has not yet risen. A profound silence hangs over the water, a stillness that feels ancient and sacred. This is the Nile. Before the light comes, a cool mist clings to its surface, swirling like a ghostly veil over the dark, placid current. The air itself seems to hold its breath, waiting. You can almost hear the quiet whispers of millennia gone by, carried on the gentle breeze that rustles through the reeds along the bank. It is a moment of pure magic, a time when the boundary between the past and the present feels impossibly thin, as if the gods of old might still be watching from the shadows. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, a faint line of gold appears on the eastern horizon. It creeps upwards, casting a soft, ethereal glow that turns the gray mist into a shimmering curtain of silver and rose. The silhouettes of feluccas, their tall masts like sleeping sentinels, begin to take shape against the brightening sky. A lone ibis, a sacred bird of ancient times, takes flight, its long curved beak pointing towards the nascent day. The river awakens not with a sudden clamor, but with a gradual, graceful unfolding, a daily ritual that has been repeated for countless thousands of years. This daily resurrection mirrors the very life the river has given to this land. As the light strengthens, the water reveals its true character. It is not merely a river but a living entity, a flowing tapestry woven with history and myth. Its surface glimmers, reflecting the pastel colors of the dawn sky, a mirror to the heavens. You can see the gentle eddies and currents, subtle movements that hint at the immense power flowing beneath. This is the water that birthed a civilization, that nourished empires, and that has witnessed the rise and fall of dynasties. Every ripple seems to tell a story, every reflection a memory of a time long past, a time of pharaohs, priests, and deities who walked these very banks. The world along the river begins to stir, the distant sound of a village waking up, the call to prayer echoing softly across the water, the gentle splash of an oar from an early fisherman's boat. These are the modern sounds, yet they blend seamlessly into the ancient atmosphere. The Nile connects them all. The past and the present, the divine and the mortal. It flows on, indifferent to the passage of time, a constant presence in a world of change. At this quiet hour, as the sun finally breaks free of the horizon, the river feels less like a body of water and more like the very soul of Egypt, eternal and mysterious. The Nile story does not begin here in the deserts of Egypt. Its origins lie far to the south, deep within the heart of the African continent, a grand and complex mystery that puzzled explorers for centuries. The river is not one, but two. The White Nile, the longer of the two branches, begins its journey in the Great Lakes region of Central Africa. It flows from sources around Lake Victoria, tumbling through lush green landscapes, a steady and reliable stream. It travels through dense rainforests and vast wetlands, a life-giving force for the myriad creatures that depend upon its constant, gentle flow through countries like Uganda and South Sudan. The second branch is the Blue Nile, and it is a river of dramatic contrast. Its source is Lake Tana, nestled high in the Ethiopian highlands. This river is seasonal, powerful, and wild. For much of the year it is a modest stream, but during the summer monsoon rains, it transforms into a raging torrent. It carves its way through deep gorges, carrying with it millions of tons of rich volcanic silt from the highlands. This dark, fertile soil is the secret to the Nile's magic, the precious cargo that it will deliver downstream. The Blue Nile's journey is violent and energetic, a stark contrast to the placid journey of its white counterpart. These two great rivers, one white and one blue, one calm and one fierce, travel for thousands of miles on their separate paths. They finally meet at a city that owes its very existence to their union, Khartoum, the capital of Sudan. Here, at this remarkable confluence, the two rivers merge to become one. The waters mingle, the calm flow of the White Nile tempering the energetic rush of the Blue Nile. From this point onwards, it is simply the Nile, a single, mighty river beginning the final, most famous stage of its epic journey northwards towards the Mediterranean Sea. The combined power and volume are immense. From Khartoum, the unified Nile embarks on a long and arduous trek across the vast expanse of the Sahara, the largest hot desert in the world. It flows for over 1,000 miles through a landscape that would otherwise be utterly barren and uninhabitable. The river forms a narrow, verdant ribbon of life, a stark green slash against the endless miles of golden sand and rock. This is the final leg of its incredible journey, a 6,650-kilometer odyssey from the heart of Africa to the sea. It is the longest river on Earth, a true artery of the continent, carrying life through the harshest of environments. Without the Nile, the story of ancient Egypt would simply not exist. In a land that receives almost no rainfall, where the sun beats down relentlessly upon endless sand, this river was everything. It was the singular source of water, the very essence of life itself. The ancient Egyptians did not just live near the river, they lived because of it. Their entire world was oriented around its rhythms, its gifts, and its moods. They called their land Kemet, the Black Land, named for the dark, fertile mud the river left behind, and they distinguished it from Deshret, the red land of the barren desert that surrounded them. The Nile was more than just a source of drinking water, it was the highway of the ancient world. Long before the invention of the wheel became widespread, the river was the primary means of transport and communication. Boats of all sizes, from small reed skiffs to grand royal barges, sailed up and down its length. They carried goods for trade, stone from the southern quarries for building pyramids and temples, and armies to defend the kingdom's borders. The river connected the disparate towns and cities of Upper and Lower Egypt, unifying them into a single, cohesive state. It was the backbone of the empire, allowing pharaohs to command and control a vast territory with remarkable efficiency. Most importantly, the Nile was the foundation of Egypt's extraordinary agricultural wealth. Every year, like clockwork, the river would swell and overflow its banks, inundating the surrounding floodplain. This annual event, known as the inundation, was not a destructive catastrophe, but a welcome miracle. When the waters receded, they left behind a thick layer of that precious black silt, rich in minerals and nutrients from the Ethiopian highlands. This deposit renewed the soil, making it incredibly fertile. The Egyptians simply had to cast their seeds into this gifted earth and wait for the sun to do its work. This agricultural abundance was the engine that powered the entire civilization. The predictable food surplus meant that not everyone had to be a farmer. It freed up a large portion of the population to become scribes, priests, soldiers, artisans, and architects. It was this surplus that allowed for the construction of the colossal pyramids, the intricate tombs in the Valley of the Kings, and the magnificent temples of Karnak and Luxor. The Nile's gift of food was a gift of time. Time for people to develop art, science, religion, and a complex system of government. It was, in every sense, the cradle of one of humanity's greatest civilizations. To the ancient Egyptians, the Nile was not merely a physical river, it was a divine entity, a sacred manifestation of the gods' goodwill. Its origins were not to be found on any earthly map, but in the realm of the cosmos. They believed the earthly Nile had a celestial counterpart, a great river that flowed across the heavens. The source of the terrestrial river was said to be a mysterious cavern located at the southern frontier of Egypt, from which the waters sprang forth from the primordial abyss of Nun. Nun was the formless, watery chaos that existed before creation, the father of all gods. The Nile was therefore a piece of creation's dawn, flowing into their world. This cosmic connection made the river a central figure in their religious life. The Egyptians did not question where the water came from in a scientific sense. They knew it was a gift, and they created a rich tapestry of myths to honor its divine nature. The river was a god itself, a source of all life that required reverence and worship. Temples were built along its banks not just to honor gods like Ra or Horus, but to pay homage to the spirit of the river that sustained them. Offerings were made directly to the water, prayers recited to ensure its continued benevolence, for they knew that their very survival depended on its favor. The river's divine nature was woven into the fabric of their daily existence and their understanding of the universe. The direction of its flow, from south to north, was fundamental to their worldview. South was up, the direction of the river's source, and north was down. Their entire cosmology was shaped by the river's geography. It was a benevolent, life-giving force, but it could also be unpredictable, and its moods were interpreted as messages from the divine realm. A low flood meant famine and hardship, while an excessive flood could be destructive. Pleasing the gods who controlled the river was of paramount importance. The Nile was more than just a provider of water and food. It was a source of spiritual nourishment. It represented the cycle of life, death, and rebirth that was at the core of Egyptian religious belief. The annual inundation, where the land was flooded and then re-emerged fertile and green, was a powerful symbol of resurrection. It was a yearly promise that life would always triumph over death, that order would always emerge from chaos. This belief was deeply embedded in their culture, influencing their art, their rituals, and their elaborate preparations for the afterlife, all mirrored in the eternal flow of the sacred river. At the very heart of the Nile's divine power was the god Hapy. He was not the god of the river itself, for that was a concept too vast to be contained in a single deity. Instead, Hapy was the personification of the inundation, the annual flood that brought life to Egypt. He was the spirit of that momentous event. He was often depicted as an androgynous figure with a large belly and heavy breasts, symbols of fertility and nourishment. His skin was painted blue or green, representing the life-giving water and the new vegetation that followed. He was a figure of abundance, the bringer of the silt that made the land rich. The ancient Egyptians eagerly awaited Hapy's arrival each year. His coming was the most important event in the calendar, marking the beginning of a new season of life. They held great festivals in his honor, singing hymns and making offerings to encourage a perfect flood. They prayed for a flood that was neither too low, which would lead to starvation, nor too high, which would wash away homes and villages. The ideal inundation was a delicate balance, and it was Hapy they had to please to achieve it. He was seen as a generous but sometimes fickle god, whose mood could determine the fate of the entire nation for the year ahead. Hapy was believed to live in a cave near the first cataract of the Nile at Aswan, a rocky, turbulent section of the river. It was from this sacred grotto that he was thought to unleash the floodwaters. The pharaoh himself played a crucial role in the rituals dedicated to Hapy, acting as the intermediary between the people and the god. It was the pharaoh's responsibility to ensure the god was content. Inscriptions show kings making offerings of food, flowers, and precious amulets, casting them into the river to appease Hapy and guarantee his generosity. The well-being of the kingdom rested on this sacred relationship. The hymns sung to Hapy revealed the depth of the people's devotion and dependence. They called him the Lord of Fishes and Birds of the Marshes, the creator of grain, and the one who brings nourishment. When Hapy arrived, they sang, "All faces are joyful." His presence transformed the dry, cracked earth into a lush paradise. He was not a distant, imposing god like the sun god Ra, but a beloved and intimate deity whose effects were seen and felt by every single person. Hapy was the tangible evidence of divine providence, the god whose blessings could be measured in the depth of the water and the richness of the harvest. Perhaps no myth is more deeply connected to the Nile's symbolism of life, death, and resurrection than the story of the god Osiris. Osiris was a wise and benevolent king who ruled over a golden age, teaching humanity the arts of agriculture and civilization. His jealous brother Set, the god of chaos and the desert, despised him. Set tricked Osiris, trapping him in a beautiful chest and casting it into the waters of the Nile. The river carried the chest containing the body of the dead king downstream, eventually washing it ashore in a foreign land. The great river, the source of life, became a vessel for death. Osiris's devoted wife, the goddess Isis, was heartbroken. She searched tirelessly for her husband's body, finally finding it and bringing it back to Egypt. But Set's cruelty was not finished. He discovered the body, and in a furious rage he tore it into 14 pieces, scattering them all across the land of Egypt, with many falling into the Nile itself. The story took on an even darker turn, as the life-giving river now held the dismembered remains of the beloved king. The land fell into sorrow, and the natural order was thrown into chaos by this terrible act of fratricide. Isis, with the help of her sister Nephthys, did not give up. She painstakingly traveled the length of the Nile, gathering every piece of her husband's body. It was a sacred pilgrimage, and at each location where a piece was found, a temple was later built. Once she had reassembled him, Isis used her powerful magic to breathe life back into Osiris, resurrecting him. This miraculous rebirth was not a return to his old life on Earth, however. Instead, Osiris became the king of the Duat, the underworld, and the judge of the dead. He became a symbol of eternal life and the promise of resurrection for all. This powerful myth became deeply intertwined with the Nile's annual cycle. The death of Osiris was mirrored in the dry season, when the river was low and the land seemed to die. The scattering of his body was like the sowing of seeds upon the earth. The flood, the inundation brought by Hapy, was seen as the tears of Isis mourning her lost husband. And just as Osiris was reborn, the land was reborn when the floodwaters receded, leaving behind the fertile silt from which new life could spring. The Nile was therefore not just a river of water but the very stage for the cosmic drama of death and rebirth. Beyond the well-known myths, the Nile holds darker legends, whispered tales of curses and divine retribution. One such story is tied to a remote, desolate stretch of the river far to the south, in the heart of Nubia. Here, for a few days each year, the water is said to take on a deep, unsettling crimson hue, as if stained with blood. Local legends do not attribute this to silt or algae, but to a pharaoh's forgotten sin. They say it is the curse of Akhenaten, the heretic king who defied the old gods and plunged Egypt into religious turmoil during his reign in the 14th century BC. Akhenaten abandoned the traditional pantheon of gods, including the revered deities of the Nile like Hapy and Osiris. He decreed that there was only one god, the Aten, represented by the disk of the sun. He closed the ancient temples, erased the names of the old gods from monuments, and moved his capital to a new isolated city in the desert. This was an unprecedented act of heresy. The priests and the people believed he had angered the gods, particularly those who governed the river. They feared that the Nile, the very source of their existence, would turn against them as punishment for their king's arrogance. The legend claims that after Akhenaten's death, the gods exacted their revenge. While his son, Tutankhamun, restored the old religion, the gods were not fully appeased. They placed a curse upon this secluded part of the river, a place Akhenaten was said to have passed on a journey south. Each year, on the anniversary of his greatest blasphemy, the river bleeds to remember his sin. The red water is a divine warning, a reminder that no one, not even a pharaoh, can sever the sacred bond between Egypt and its pantheon of gods without consequence. The river itself serves as the instrument of this eternal punishment. While scientists today might explain the red color as a result of specific mineral deposits or unique algal blooms washed down from the mountains, the power of the legend endures. For the people who live along this stretch of the river, the scientific explanation holds little sway. They see the crimson tide and remember the stories of the heretic pharaoh who turned his back on the divine forces that gave their ancestors life. The river, in its mysterious ways, becomes a keeper of justice, its waters carrying a memory of a king's hubris and the enduring power of the ancient faith he tried to destroy. Today, the Nile's divine myths have faded into the background, but its central role in the lives of millions of people is as vital as ever. The river that once served pharaohs now sustains bustling modern cities and quiet farming villages. Cairo, a sprawling metropolis of over 20 million people, throbs with life on its banks. At night, its waters reflect the glittering lights of skyscrapers, hotels, and bridges, a scene the ancient Egyptians could never have imagined. Yet, the fundamental relationship remains unchanged. The city draws its water, its commerce, and much of its identity from the river that flows through its heart. Further south, life moves at a slower pace, one that feels more connected to the ancient rhythms. Farmers still work the narrow, fertile strips of land along the banks, though the annual flood is now controlled by the massive Aswan High Dam. This colossal feat of modern engineering, completed in the 1970s, ended the cycle of inundation, providing a reliable, year-round water supply and generating hydroelectric power. While it has brought stability, it has also changed the river forever, trapping the precious silt behind its walls and forcing farmers to rely on artificial fertilizers to enrich their soil. The river remains a crucial artery for transport and tourism. Graceful feluccas with their distinctive white sails still glide across the water, carrying travelers who wish to experience the timeless beauty of the Nile. They sail alongside large, luxurious cruise ships that ferry tourists between the magnificent ancient sites of Luxor and Aswan. Fishermen in small, simple boats continue to cast their nets as their ancestors did, their livelihoods entirely dependent on the health and bounty of the river's ecosystem. The Nile is a workplace, a playground, and a home, a dynamic blend of the ancient and the modern. From the high rises of Cairo to the simple mud brick homes in rural villages, the lives of nearly all Egyptians are inextricably linked to this single ribbon of water. They face modern challenges: water scarcity due to growing populations and climate change, and pollution from industry and agriculture. The delicate balance between human needs and the river's health is more precarious than ever. Yet the dependence, the reverence, and the deep connection persist. The Nile is not a relic of the past, it is a living, breathing entity that continues to shape the destiny of millions. The Nile flows on. It has watched empires rise from the dust and crumble back into it. It has carried the barges of pharaohs and the prayers of priests. It has felt the heat of the desert sun for millennia and has reflected the light of countless stars. The river is more than a geographical feature. It is a library of time, its currents holding stories that we can only guess at. Every grain of sand on its bed, every drop of water that completes the long journey to the sea, is a witness to history. The voices of the past are not truly silent here. They are merely quiet, absorbed into the river's endless, gentle flow. The secrets it holds are immense. What forgotten rituals were performed on its banks under a full moon? What treasures, lost from a capsized royal boat, still lie buried deep within its muddy bed? The river was a place of life, but also of intrigue and death. It has hidden the bodies of the murdered and carried the secret messages of lovers. It has heard the whispered plots of courtiers and the desperate pleas of the downtrodden. These human dramas, large and small, have all been entrusted to the water, which holds them in its silent, patient embrace, revealing nothing. As the sun sets, casting a final, brilliant orange glow across its surface, the river once again assumes its air of profound mystery. The modern world seems to fade away, and the ancient one feels tantalizingly close. One can almost imagine the gods of old, Hapy, Osiris, Isis, still watching over their sacred domain. The river remembers them, just as it remembers the pharaohs, the builders, the farmers, and every soul who has ever drawn life from its waters. It is a liquid memory, a flowing chronicle of human aspiration and divine myth. And so the Nile continues its eternal journey, a silent keeper of secrets. It has given birth to a civilization, nourished its people, and inspired their deepest beliefs about life, death, and the cosmos. It has seen gods walk and kings fall. It has been worshipped, cursed, tamed, and polluted. Through it all, it endures. It flows northward, forever carrying the weight of history and the dust of forgotten kingdoms, a timeless river that knows all the stories but tells only one, the story of life itself, endlessly renewed, endlessly flowing towards the sea.